Hello. We looked at the Diatessaron last time, and I thought while we were on the subject, we'll look at this area of harmonies of the Gospels. I don't know if anyone's heard that terminology, but it means when you put all four books together. Now, the Diatessaron, it was all put into one single narrative, but there are other books called harmonies that put it into you have all four Gospels, but you have them in parallel columns. Now, this is very useful because when you're studying the New Testament and you're studying the Gospels, you can compare each Gospel and what each Gospel says one with another. And there are various ones of them. Here's one that's got two versions of the Gospels in. It's got an NIV and a New American Standard version in there. I have another one here that's just plainly the NIV. This is quite good because it actually, within the text there is a darker text, which means you can just read all the way through as a single narrative. But you'll see in some places it has 4 columns. Some places it has 3 columns, depending on whether, because in what's called the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark and Luke, they often have the same text in. John has often very different stories and it doesn't have the parables in. And so in John's Gospel will often be a separate column for that, which it doesn't appear in the other column. So sometimes you'll get just the 3 columns. In fact, some harmonies of the Gospel are just the 3 synoptic Gospels. This is an old copy that I picked up somewhere. It's purely the synoptics. It doesn't have John's Gospel in, so it just works with the 3 Gospels together. This one is actually in Greek, so you do have different editions of these and different tools. I think it's good to get one that's got John's Gospel in as well, because then you can compare what John says on passages. Let me just give you an example. I'll give you an example that I was looking at earlier. Now, having said that, here we go. So here's the passage earlier. You can see clearly it's got 4 columns. Well, maybe you can't see. You can see 4 columns. So some Gospels have more information about one story than others. Others don't contain as much information. So it's very worthwhile comparing what a different Gospel says about something, because you get a fuller picture. If you just take one Gospel, sometimes you don't get the whole picture. There's an interesting example that Muslims use. It says that God was sent only to the lost tribe of Israel. Now, when you read it in the other Gospel, they usually quote Mark's Gospel, but Matthew's Gospel. But if you look in Mark, it says, "First let the children eat." So if somebody's going to eat first, it implies that somebody is going to be second to eat. So that's an interesting. If you compare those 2 narratives, you'll see that there is an extra bit of information that's quite important. This passage I'm going to look at now is the sign above the head of Jesus. And this is mentioned in all 4 Gospels. So it's mentioned in Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. And it says in Matthew's Gospel, it says above his head they placed the written charge against him, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." So that says this is Jesus, the King of the Jews. So it mentions Jesus, mentions King of the Jews. In Mark's Gospel is a shorter Gospel. It's almost like an abbreviated Gospel. It's very much shorter than the others. It's only got 16 chapters, and so it leaves out quite a lot of stuff. It doesn't have the birth of Jesus. It's just straight into John the Baptist at the beginning. But it says in here, it says, they crucified him. The written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." Okay, so it just said the King of the Jews. Didn't say anything more than that. So that's quite short, just says the King of the Jews. Doesn't even mention the name Jesus. Then we go into Luke's Gospel, and it says, there was a written notice above him which read, "This is the King of the Jews." So there's an extra word in there. This is the King of the Jews. And then if we go to John's Gospel, we'll see it says here, Pilate had a notice placed and fastened to the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." So that agrees very much with what's written in Matthew, but it actually adds Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. And if you read, and there's a footnote here, it says, each writer records only a portion of the inscription. The full inscription is reconstructed by combining the four accounts. This is Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. So these narratives don't contradict. It's just that some give more information than others. And that's exactly what you would expect from independent witnesses, that they would give. Some would give more information, others would give less information. Some would just abbreviate it. And if you combine them all, you would get the full picture. So you can see that it's useful to have a harmony of the Gospels handy, so that you, otherwise what you do is you have to read one passage, you have to flick through your Bible to find the next passage, you have to flick somewhere else to find another passage, and you know, we can do that with modern digital versions, but it's a lot easier just to have it in front of you. So they are a very useful tool to have. You know, I found it great fun to have a harmony of the Gospel. So I just wanted to mention them quickly. So you can pick them up. You can search around for the different one, the one that would suit you. They're done in different versions of the Bible, and so I think I'll just leave that there. Just something that can help you in your studies. It's very good to get a very good. I've found in talking to people, sharing the gospel with people, dialoguing with people, it's very good to have a good knowledge of the Gospels, particularly, because often people will misquote them. Often people will, you know, distort them, and you really do. And many of the answers that the problems that people bring up, they're actually answered quite clearly if you really know the Scriptures. So, thank you very much. I'll just leave that there. And maybe next time we will look at something else.